We are all pulling for you, Lee's Summit. Let's go, baby. Woo! How about that? You see this yesterday? Lee's Summit, welcome in on a Tuesday morning. Lee's Summit is suing Jackson County over the recent tax assessment. I want Quentin Lucas to get on board in Kansas City. I want every city in Jackson County to sue the crap out of this place. That's what I want to see happen. I know, I'm fired up. But guess what? We're talking about individuals who are wondering whether or not they can stay in their homes based on the most screwed up tax assessment process that experts have seen over their entire careers. I mean, we shared that with you yesterday. A 40-year expert on tax assessments told KCTV5 that what's going on today in Jackson County, Missouri, is the most messed up situation she's seen in her entire career. That has led to 54,000 of you appealing your assessment. You've got a state audit that's underway and a class action lawsuit that's been filed. And now Lee's Summit is jumping in. And the mayor, Bill Baird, who's, by the way, going to be on this show at 9 o'clock this morning. It's a ways off for you early birds right now, but just know the Lee's Summit mayor is going to be here at 9. Here's what he told KCTV5.
These are real tax dollars we're talking about. And we're talking about, the fairness of one property being assessed that's the same value as another, but they're being assessed differently. There's a disparity. And we feel it's our responsibility to point this out. And we want some accountability.
Well, good for him. Good for the Lee's Summit mayor. Pushing back against Jackson County. I wish other municipalities would do this as well and saying enough's enough. We've got to stand up for our residents in our community who the county is about to royally potentially screw over. Tens of thousands of individuals. Now, why exactly are they doing this? What are they saying in their lawsuit? Well, they filed this lawsuit, Lee's Summit did, in Jackson County Circuit Court. And it accuses the county of increasing tax assessments beyond the allowable percentage and failing to notify owners of property valuation increases, among other things. So Lee's Summit is asking a judge to force the county to make accurate assessments in compliance with state law. The city is also seeking damages, as well as a way to ensure the county's compliance in the future. So part of the problem here is that Missouri law states if someone's assessment goes up by more than 15%, there has to be a physical inspection and the homeowner has to be notified. You tell me, how many people do you know in Jackson County who saw increases, considering the average was 28, 29, 30%, somewhere in there? Considering that was the average, how many people do you know who got that physical inspection? And by the way, when you look at the way the law is written, a physical inspection means literally going out, measuring the house, like doing all those things, not just driving by and taking pictures.
Got a new drone I want to try out.
Yeah, no, that doesn't count, okay? The county cannot borrow John Anthony's drone and then be like, oh, yeah, we did a physical inspection of 11245. South Maple Street. Yeah, we sent the Anthony drone over top. No. You are supposed to physically send bodies out there to do a real inspection, inform the homeowner, and then the homeowner is allowed to request an interior inspection as well. Because believe it or not, sometimes houses aren't what they appear on the outside. I know that's going to surprise some of you, or at least if you work for Jackson County, that might surprise you, but it shouldn't. So, that right there is grounds for a lawsuit. And I am glad that Lee's Summit is jumping on board with this thing. And by the way, they should be jumping on board with this thing. And I would encourage every city. Oak Grove, Grain Valley, Independence, Kansas City. Jump them all on board and get involved and sue the county. Put this county on the defensive and do it on behalf of your residents, by the way. If you want to prove that you care one iota about the people in your town, in your community, this is an easy way for you to get a big political win. If you're a mayor or a city council member in any city in Jackson County, Now, from what I've heard, Independence is considering a lawsuit as well. I hope they do it. I mean, I hope there is so much pressure on Jackson County, on the leaders, on the decision makers on this process, from Frank White to Gail McCann Beatty, who is the assessor, to everybody else involved, even the legislature, which, I think there are people on the legislature who are trying to do the right thing, generally speaking, but they're still aloof. I mean, they're politicians. They're still going to drag their feet. And they're not going to do, right by the people for the most part. I mean, maybe that's pessimistic of me, but I firmly believe that. So even last night, there was a meeting for the Jackson County Legislature in the afternoon, and Jonathan Ketz of Fox 4 put this up. He said here that Sean Smith introduced an ordinance trying to enact Senate Bill 190. Now, that would have capped property taxes for seniors across the state of Missouri. Senate Bill 190. It was introduced by Tony Luchtemeier, our state senator in Platte and Buchanan counties. But it was struck down. Yeah, that's right. It was struck down.
8-1.
8-1. I mean, how is this possible? I put up a meme last night in response to Jonathan Ketz's tweet breaking that news. And it was just live look at Jackson County Legislature, and it was a man running into a wall. I mean, that's what these people are. They can't get out of their own way. They literally are running into a wall, and even when they're trying to do the right thing and their hearts are in the right places, they can't just rally around the fact that they need to do right by their citizens and their constituents.
There's just not enough time, Pete. Right?
Oh, gosh.
Mm-hmm.
Don't even get me started on that. Yeah. You mean you need, the county wants more time for what? What are they saying, John, on the time issue? What are they complaining about?
Well, I don't have specifics, but basically we think there's some kind of magic, and they don't have the machinations in place in the organization to do this for this year. But we'll want to look at it next year. They sent the measure through, right?
Go screw yourselves.
Right?
I mean, please.
And then Frank White saying, well, I think everybody wants to see something done. That's why you're at the meeting.
Frank, you're the damn executive of the county, for crying out loud. You sound like a guy who showed up to give his 90-second stump speech. All right, sir, you got 90 seconds. I'd love to see something done. Okay, that's not what you say when you're the county executive, which Frank White is. I mean, when you look up aloof in the dictionary, there should be a big picture of Joe Biden's face. And by the way, he's replacing the face of Joe Biden, who would have been there prior. But now the face of the definition of aloof is Frank White, at least here locally. I mean, that is just, it's brutal on so many levels. And the county claiming they don't have enough time to handle these 54,000 individuals and residents in Jackson County who are appealing their assessments. Well, you know what? Too bad. Too bad. That's not how this works. All right, you assess a property, and if you screw it up, you don't get to hide behind the fact of, well, we don't have time to do this. Too bad. This is a disaster. And I'm glad that I firmly believe that people are starting to catch and feel more and more heat. The power players involved are starting to feel more and more heat around this, and damn it, they should. 913-408-7710. And we're not going to let it go. We've got the Lee Summit Mayor coming up, as I noted, 9 o'clock this morning on KCMO Talk Radio. Meantime, a big win on the other side of the state when it comes to, air quotes, gender-affirming care. We'll tell you who's doing what on that front. It's a big win. We'll get to it next. A lot of winning out of the gates over the last 24 hours across the state of Missouri. Lee Summit suing Jackson County over these tax assessments. Thank goodness. Hopefully some good comes out of that. And then yesterday, how about this? At Washington University, of course, on the other side of the state. WashU officials announcing yesterday the school's physicians will stop providing gender-affirming medications, aka genital mutilation, to minors who are technically eligible for those treatments under a new Missouri law. So this went into play last week, and we talked about it when it went into effect last week, that now in Missouri, after what was passed in the state legislature and signed by Governor Parson, when it comes to gender affirming, I use my air quotes when I say that, care in the state of Missouri, they cannot, and medical providers cannot give gender affirming care to any new patients that are minors. Once again, minors. Adults can do whatever they want in the state of Missouri. But when it comes to minors in Missouri, the only way you could get this kind of treatment is now if you're already undergoing the treatment as of August 28th. So if you had started the treatment, the law said you could continue it. If you are a minor, if you're an adult, you're free to do what you want to do. However, WashU is saying that even if you have been receiving care as a minor from their facilities, they're stopping. Here's what WashU said in a statement. It says, Washington University physicians will no longer prescribe puberty blockers or cross-sex hormones to minors for purposes of gender transition. They said this in the statement, adding that patients will be referred elsewhere. Says the WashU Transgender Center at St. Louis Children's Hospital will continue to offer education and mental health services to transgender youths, which is still allowed under law. Transgender adults will also still be able to receive medications from WashU physicians. Okay, well, this is how it should be, by the way. Let's be very clear. You're an adult. Nobody should stop you in Missouri or anywhere else in this country from doing what you want to do to your body. You have a right to do that, and no politician should stand in the way. When it comes to minors, when it comes to kids, there's a million things that we don't let children do because their brains have not fully developed. I don't think it's crazy to suggest that allowing them to take puberty blockers before their brains are fully developed is not something they should be allowed to do and is not very controversial. Of course, it is in today's incredibly insane cultural climate that we find ourselves in. But that's, I think if you were to poll people, that's pretty common sense across the board, right? You do what you want to do as an adult, but as kids, we don't let you drive. We don't let you drink. We don't let you smoke. We certainly aren't going to let you decide that it's in your best interest as a minor to take puberty blockers or cross-sex hormone treatment. Sorry, not going to do it. But WashU explained why, in a statement, they are not going to continue with this stuff, even for those who they had already been treating. Officials said that the situation now in the state of Missouri with the new law has created a new legal claim for patients who receive these medications as minors. They say the claim creates, quote, unsustainable liability for healthcare professionals and makes it untenable for us to continue to provide comprehensive transgender care for minor patients without subjecting the university and our providers to an unacceptable level of liability. How do I interpret that? I interpret that to mean that they are fearful that under the new state law, these children's hospitals where they are administering these cross-sex hormones and puberty blockers are afraid that they could get sued by somebody who was receiving this kind of care from the hospital and then as an adult decided they didn't want to get this care anymore and then potentially ended up filing a lawsuit against WashU and the Children's Hospital. And WashU does not want to open itself up to that kind of liability. They are fearful that they will get sued for what they do to minors, even if they're legally allowed to continue this kind of treatment under state law. I believe that's what's going on here. They're not saying that. I mean, they're kind of saying it without saying it. But I believe that they are realizing that the liability that they are incurring if they continue to give 16-year-olds puberty blockers can come back to bite them. And whether that's because of how the Missouri law is written or they've just come to their senses, I don't know. But either way, I'm not here to complain about it because that's a great thing for young people in Missouri. If you want to do it, you know what? You can wait till you're 18. You can think about it, hopefully, with friends and family, and then go from there. But some folks are screaming bloody murder about it. This morning, 5:37 today, Manny Abarca, who is on the Jackson County Legislature, he shared this article, and he wrote on X, formerly known as Twitter, "We cannot let this happen," writes Manny Abarca. "We cannot let Wash U stop giving minors puberty blockers and cross-sex hormone treatments. Hey, Manny, how about you just worry about the damn tax assessments in this county? For crying out loud. I mean, you're on the Jackson County Legislature. Stop worrying about 13-year-olds getting jacked up with puberty blockers in St. Louis and start worrying about what the heck's going on in your backyard where your constituents are wondering whether or not they can stay in their homes because of the county's disaster of a tax assessment process. I mean, come on, Manny.
Come on, man.
Jeez. I don't know. I'm fired up this morning. Usually Tuesdays, I always say Tuesdays are the worst day of the week, you know. Monday, you got a little pep in your step. Tuesday's like, ugh. But not this morning, man. I'm ready to roll. We got Tirade Tuesday coming up in 2 hours, 8:30 on KCMO. I've had a half hour of that thus far. Next, the travel nightmares in the U.S. How bad are they getting? Got a couple of examples you're not going to want to miss, plus your stories on KCMO. Is there anything worse than air travel in this country right now? I mean, thank you, Mayor Pete. Unbelievable. If you are going up to the airport this morning, let us know how you're doing, by the way. This story's for you. I don't want to freak you out as you get your Tuesday morning off on the wrong foot, potentially. But here we go. So by now, you know that air travel is just an absolute disaster, right? I mean, it's terrible in this country right now. There's a lot of reasons for it. But the airlines are a mess. The FAA is a complete disaster as well. I mean, there's so many things going on right now when it comes to air travel in this country that is, I mean, it's like third world country type stuff. The fact that we are the greatest country in the history of mankind and we sit like sardines on these uncomfortable airplanes and the process we go through to get on them is just really embarrassing. People are going to look back on us in 150 years and be like, they did what? That's how they got around? It's going to be like how we look at the horse and buggy. I mean, that's how pathetic air travel has gotten in this country. So Delta passengers were stranded on an island, a Portuguese island, where they were stuck in a secluded part of the airport for 12 hours, had to beg for food as airline representatives warned them not to start a revolution. This was a flight carrying 200 people from Ghana to New York this past Friday when it experienced a mechanical issue with a backup oxygen system. So it had to divert to this airport. And what passengers are saying is that they were abandoned by Delta and treated like encroaching roaches by airport representatives, saying they had a reckless disregard for human life and well-being. Oh, my goodness gracious. Somebody else saying to Business Insider they arrived around 6 a.m., but the crew were soon shuttled away to a hotel while the passengers were told to remain and contact Delta for more information. Yeah, have you ever tried to call an airline, by the way? I hope you have 7 hours free to do absolutely nothing. That's how long it'll take if you want to actually call up one of these airlines. I mean, you know, I'd rather be waterboarded than sit on a hold with Delta or American or any of these places for that matter. I mean, it's an absolutely horrible experience. So, of course, no one's having any success in terms of getting a hold of anybody with Delta. So what happens next? According to some of the folks who were on this flight, around 11:30 a.m., they landed around 6 a.m., but around 11:30 a.m., they were told they were no longer going to be fed because, according to an airport representative, Delta had informed them that they had already eaten in advance of the landing. So there was no other access to food. There was no other food, apparently. At this airport, at some Portuguese island, Delta's got no food as well, and the plane left over, so there's no food to give these people. So they're stranded in an airport. No one knows when they're getting out of this airport, and there's no food to speak of. Sounds like the end of times. Oh, gosh. Finally, a small cafe in the corner of the airport opened later in the day, allowing those with credit cards to purchase food. Shortly after that, after more begging and pleading, Delta eventually gave these people ham sandwiches, juice boxes, and crackers. Nothing like a little ham sandwich and juice box to get the day started, right, John?
Little jambon for the day.
Oh, my goodness. One passenger said some members of her travel group received messages from Delta airline representatives that seemed to be copied and pasted, while others were told a rescue plan was coming. While they waited, some described, some people, that the elderly, pregnant women, children became restless, frustrated, and confused. And when they asked for more information from staffers at the airport, a woman told them they should not start a revolution and that they should be grateful at a second chance at life, is what they were told. Now, this was not a plane that was going down or anything like that. It had an emergency landing because of an oxygen tank. I mean, why did that happen, by the way? That should not have happened, but it did happen. But to tell the customers who you're not providing any food, water, or information to that they should be lucky to be alive is very much on brand for major American airlines in 2023. Hey, just be grateful that you paid us hundreds of dollars to not die in getting from point A to point B. This is unbelievable. Finally, around 6 p.m., a flight arrived at this airport off Portugal and brought them to JFK Airport in New York. After well over 12 hours of sitting at an airport and not having any food provided to them by Delta. Oh, my goodness gracious.
You should have told them, hey, it's lucky you're not on a flight to Barcelona from Atlanta. Did you see this video?
Yeah.
Hold the phone in their face.
The one where the guy with diarrhea all over the airplane from last week. I mean, every week we've got a new airport
Some
story.
issues, yeah.
And then there's also this one here. Livid couple made to sit next to farting dog who drooled on their legs on 13-hour flight from Paris to Singapore. It was an emotional support dog that snored and farted for the entire 13-hour flight, according to these two folks who were on the Singapore Airlines flight from Paris to Singapore.
We didn't do one other story, but real quick, in Canada, a couple of people were kicked off because they didn't want to sit in their seats because someone had barfed in that seat on the prior flight, and they didn't clean it up all the way, and the attendants had thrown down coffee grounds and things to try to, snuff out the smell. And so these people were claiming, look, there's chunks right here.
Oh.
But they hauled them off of the airline.
Is that right?
They took the two people off.
Oh, my goodness.
And so one guy, I'm embarrassed to be a Canadian, was one of the quotes.
Well, that would be every day for me.
They got some problems up there, too.
Jeez.
How about that?
I mean, I'm telling you, we're going to, none of us will be here, but in 100 years, they're going to look back on us and say, that's how they, air travel in this country was pretty good. I don't know. I remember the 90s of being pretty enjoyable. You used to get a hot meal. You didn't have all the TSA crap pre 9/11. It was kind of like an experience. Now you're a sardine jammed into one of these seats that nobody can fit in unless you're 5'7", 120 pounds. And, outside of that, it's just an awful experience.
Seems
awful.
like teenagers would have been in charge of that flight crew in Canada. It's like, how do we get rid of the smell? Here, dump the coffee pot.
Yeah, well, here's what we did back in college, you
Right?
know?
Yeah, exactly.
This one's worked on Parents' Weekend. Johnny barfed all over the couch right before the parents were going to show up after doing, a morning shotgun. And we just threw some coffee grounds on there, and nobody noticed. Wink, wink, nod, nod. One of those deals. Oh, God. I mean, every week we could go through a ton of stories from airlines. And, this most recent one I just shared about the dog that was snoring and farting, I'll tell you what, the emotional support dog has gotten out of control. The way that gets abused, you can get any kook, crank therapist to be like, oh, yeah, Bob needs his emotional support dog on the airplane. You can get any therapist to write you something like that these days. And it's clearly being abused. I feel like every airplane I go on, and I go on a decent amount, there's a dog on there. And not like a dog that's underneath the seat in a little carry-on. Like, dog's just kind of hanging out, sitting in the chair. He's waiting for his the stewardess to come around and offer him something to drink and a bag of peanuts. I'm like, what the hell is this? Sheesh. Oh, gosh. Another thing annoying me here on a Tuesday. There's my tirade Tuesday, by the way. Yours is coming up at 6:30. So start thinking about that as we roll through the 6 o'clock hour on KCMO Talk Radio, 710 AM and 103.7 FM. Can you believe this guy, man? Holy cow. 7:05, happy Tuesday. Welcome in, unless your name is Frank White, the Jackson County executive. This guy yesterday actually spoke to the media. I mean, it has been months since anybody has seen Frank White. Never mind heard from him, never mind, seemed accountable or talked to the people of his county amidst this assessment debacle that continues throughout Jackson County. Well, yesterday, with the Jackson County Legislature meeting and trying to figure out what to do about these assessments, you got 54,000 plus appeals throughout the county. It is, in some people's estimations, the worst assessment process they've seen in their 40-year career around the country when it comes to these tax assessments. Finally, somebody has seen the county executive. I mean, there's been a missing persons report out for Frank White for the better part of 6 months now, but finally he resurfaced yesterday. He saw him. We saw him. And this was a moment for Frank White to show leadership. This was a moment for Frank White to stand there and at least pretend and act like he cares about the people who elected him. And he failed miserably at doing that yesterday. So Jackson County Legislature meets, and they basically do nothing. Sean Smith, one of the county legislators who's been a guest on this show, he introduced a plan at the county level to cap property taxes for seniors. This is courtesy of a statewide piece of legislation, Senate Bill 190, that passed through the Missouri legislature this year that allowed counties to cap property taxes on senior citizens. It went up in flames yesterday in an 8-1 vote. So afterwards, that would be a great time for Frank White, the leader of the county, to say, hey, we got a problem here. We got to get this thing straightened out. Here's my idea. No one's heard from the guy in forever. Instead, take a listen to what Frank White said to the media, this courtesy of Channel 9 yesterday afternoon.
I think everybody wants to see something happen. We just want to make sure that what we do is the best thing for everybody.
No, you don't care about the best thing for everybody. If Frank White cared about the best thing for everybody, he would have put a pause to the entire process weeks ago. He would have said, this Jackson County assessment issue is so screwed up, is so out of whack, that we've got to put a pause on the entire thing. We have to start from scratch. We cannot continue like this. We cannot operate the county. We cannot do this to our homeowners. We just can't do it. Instead, the guy basically says nothing. Yeah, we got to do something. We got to get something done. We got to do something in the best interest of everybody.
I think everybody wants to see something happen. We just want to make sure that what we do is the best thing for everybody.
Such a cute soundbite.
What? It's kind of like, when you're having a conversation with your significant other and you're trying to decide something and you throw out an idea and you get told that idea is not good. And that's fine. It happens. But then you're like, okay, what's your idea? And there is no idea. It's like, well, I don't like your idea. Okay, fine. So give me a better idea. No, I don't have a better idea. All right, so you don't like my idea, but you don't have a better idea. Just so we're all clear here, right? Listen, we've all had those conversations. It's part of life. That's Frank White. The difference here is Frank White has had months to come up with a better idea. Frank White has had literally the entire summer where no one's seen the guy, where his own constituents are wondering whether or not they can stay in their homes. And this guy is so aloof, is so out of touch, that he finally shows his face yesterday and he says nothing. Well, I wish we had a good idea that helped people. Yeah, Frank, that's what you're supposed to be there to do. You were just reelected county executive not even 12 months ago, my man. And this is what you're doing? This is the best that you've got. Yeah, we should really do something here. Gosh, we should really try to figure out something that helps people. Yeah, I mean, Frank White sounds like a guy who's speaking during open mic during these county and city meetings. Somebody just shows up and says, like, let's do something. Okay, what do you want to do? I don't know, but do something. Like, that's reserved for Joe on Maple Street when he shows up to his county commission meeting or his city hall meeting, not for the guy who's actually the county executive. And then you have this report from KMBC, Channel 9, and this is just, you could find thousands of examples like this around the entire county. Take a listen.
77-year-old Gary Freeman was part of a parade of seniors to give public testimony about their assessments. Freeman's assessment last year, $251,000. This year, $832,000 plus, before he appealed and felt pressured to settle for $500,000.
And they said, sign this, and I was kind of reluctant.
This guy, 77 years old, living in his home, went from an assessment of, $270 to over $800. And then the county brought it down to $500, and he felt pressure to sign it because, it's a hell of a lot better than $800, so he did. That's the kind of stuff that's happening en masse around Jackson County, where people are feeling pressured because, suddenly $500,000 on assessment seems a lot better than $800,000, even if it's almost double what your prior assessment was at about $270. And Frank White, as many of you are noting on the text line, sounds like Kamala Harris. He's got the Kamala word salad thing going. What do you say?
I think everybody wants to see something happen. We just want to make sure that what we do, it's the best thing for everybody.
We just want to make sure what we do is the best thing for everybody. Okay, so what are your ideas on things we can do, Frank, that are in the best interest of everybody? You mean you don't have any? You mean you are the definition of an empty suit? You mean that you are somebody who, frankly, I don't know how Frank White survives this, politically speaking. I just don't know how. But then again, a part of me says the guy's head is so far up in the clouds that I don't think he genuinely understands the pain that people are going to feel out of this. I don't know if it's aloofness or if it's an inability to actually comprehend what's going on here. This is not a left, right, Republican, Democrat. This is just, do you care about your constituents? Do you care about the people who elected you? That's the only question here. It's not about political ideology. And Frank White, in speaking for the first time yesterday, confirmed what I long believed to be the case. He does not care. There's no way you can listen to that man yesterday, say what he said, speaking for the first time in months to the public, and think that he gives a damn about you. He doesn't. And I thought he might at least, if he was going to show up and speak to the media, he would at least pretend like he cared. That is a man that does not care. He doesn't care about you, your livelihood, or your ability to afford whatever the property taxes are going to be. If he cared even one iota, he would not have said what he said yesterday. There's no way. 913-408-7710. You heard there from Frank White. If you're a Jackson County resident, you've been dealing with these assessments for the better part of, 3-4 months now. How does that make you feel? 913-408-7710.
I think everybody wants to see something happen. We just want to make sure that what we do, it's the best thing for everybody.
22nd anniversary yesterday of September 11th and the attacks from 22 years ago. And it's well noted that the old guy who runs the country was nowhere to be found. No one could find him in New York City. No one could find him in Washington, D.C., where he lives. And certainly wasn't in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, where United Fight 93 courageously went down. Now, the big guy was in Alaska yesterday, because obviously, Alaska is the place to be on September 11th.
He's looking to get as far away in the United States as possible, and he'd already been to Hawaii.
Yeah, pretty much,
Yeah.
you know. So he decided, I'm going to spend my time in Alaska on September 11th. Now, he was there because he was in the Far East last week. He had to make a pit stop in Vietnam, and I guess, I don't know, he couldn't get back in time. I don't know. I find it wildly insulting, but that's what the White House said. I don't know why you couldn't do the Vietnam thing before you did the rest of your Far East trip. That way you could get back to the East Coast for the September 11th anniversary by Sunday, right? I mean, I don't know. It doesn't seem that difficult to me. The guy was just on vacation for the last 6 weeks, sitting on the beach. I mean, looking like a washed up, fish. It looked awful sitting there, but whatever. So this was next level, though. Peter Doocy, Fox News, White House correspondent, he pushed a little bit on this. He's the only one that actually asked questions. And listen to his report from yesterday.
Well, our focus the last couple of days has been on President Biden here in South Asia. And when I asked a White House official why it is that President Biden was here and missing the 9/11 commemorations at the attack sites, the analogy that I was given is that 22 years after Pearl Harbor, U.S. presidents were not still going to visit Hawaii.
I'm getting pissed now.
That's what the White House said. Well, 22 years after Pearl Harbor, nobody was going to Hawaii. I can't say what I want to say right now because it would not be FCC compliant. So I got to take a deep breath. All right? Don't worry, Mark. You don't have to hit the dump button on me here. All right? I got myself under control. Took a deep breath. I'm good to go.
With a $39.95 membership, though, you can't get an unfiltered price.
Yeah. We'll get with the promotions team after the show.
We can come up with something like that.
I'm sure we can figure something out. That is the most insulting, ridiculous, obnoxious thing that you could ever say. If that's the White House's stance, here's the thing. 22 years after Pearl Harbor, going back 60 years ago now at this point. By the way, Hawaii, Pearl Harbor, a little harder to get to. You're talking about a guy who literally had to roll out of bed and show up to the Pentagon. That's it. I mean, the Pentagon. The guy sees it from his bedroom window, for crying out loud. It's not like I'm saying, he didn't go to New York. He was only in D.C. at the Pentagon. He could have been at the Pentagon. He could have sent Kamala to give you some word salad up in Manhattan yesterday. Right? You could have sent Jill out to Shanksville. Isn't she a PA girl? And then you could have rolled out of bed, put on your Depends, and gone over to the Pentagon and said a few words. But this whole thing of, no one was going to Pearl Harbor 22 years after the fact, here's what's really going on. The more attention they bring to September 11th, the more the average person realizes that we have set ourselves up through their open borders policies for a 9/11 2.0. You can't sit there and say, never forget, and then have the border policies of these people. You simply can't do it. You can't go out there on the anniversary of the worst terrorist attacks in this nation's history, where the individuals that came to this country did it by getting fake passports, which nowadays, who needs a fake passport? Just walk across the southern border and, they'll give you a bed to sleep in, for crying out loud. You can't say never forget and have the policies they've had over the last 2.5 years. You can't do both things. And that's what's really going on. And it's an insult to any American, any family who lost a loved one that day. I mean, that is, of all the things that have been done, there's policies that you can disagree with and things like that. But of all the things that have been intentionally done, nothing has been more insulting than that yesterday. LB, Leewood. Go ahead, LB. You're on KCMO. Good morning.
Hi. 22 years after December 7th, 1941 was 1963, which was 2 weeks after John F. Kennedy was assassinated, so no one was thinking about going to Hawaii then, and this country was in real turmoil. I was in the 5th grade, and I still remember it distinctly.
Well, you know what, LB? That's a very good point. I'm glad you brought it up. I mean, for them
and
to
the
use...
other point is Biden was gone for a week, and actually the country seems to be a little better. Things are a little quieter, and the economy is a little better. So,
well, thank you, LB. No complaints there. I mean, here's the thing. If Joe decided, hey, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to spend the next month in Vietnam. I'm not going to be too bummed about that. But to literally plan the trip and make the pit stop in Alaska, boy, oh boy. And then, by the way, he's in Alaska yesterday, and what does he say?
A rising tide of hatred and extremism and political violence. It's more important than ever that we come together around the principle of American democracy, regardless of our political backgrounds. We must not succumb to the poisonous politics of difference and division.
Says the guy who targets his political opponents and who has his Department of Justice, regardless of how you feel about Donald Trump, willingly going after his chief political opponent right now. That you're going to say that? I mean, I'd say the stones on this guy, but I question those exist.
Come on, man.
So I can't really say that. I can't really use that line. But that is next level, man. It really is. So it's not just where the president was yesterday on the 22nd anniversary of 9/11. He was in Alaska, by the way. Couldn't have been further away if he tried. Literally on a tarmac in Alaska. Gosh, where should we be on September 11th? Hey, I think a tarmac in Alaska sounds good. I mean, what the hell? What is wrong with these people? And I know he's coming back from overseas. It doesn't matter. You got to plan your trip to be back in New York, D.C., or Shanksville, Pennsylvania on September 11th. That is inexcusable. But it wasn't just that. There were three other things that happened yesterday that were just a slap in the face to any common sense American who understands what yesterday, of course, is all about. So first off, the president's in Alaska, as we've talked about. Then, as he's in Alaska, he happens to fib his story talking about where he was on September 12th. He said yesterday, Joe Biden did, that on the September 12th of 2001, he was down at ground zero. He said that yesterday. Well, here's where he actually was the day after September 11th, 2001. He was on the Senate floor.
And my sympathy go out to our colleagues from New York and Virginia in particular, but all those who have had their fellow citizens and their constituents victimized by this act.
That's a coherent Joe Biden from back in the day, 22 years ago today on the Senate floor. Yet yesterday he's talking about how he was down at ground zero. So once again, nothing new, but Joe Biden lying about his whereabouts in the aftermath of September 11th. What else happened yesterday? Think about this. This happens on the 22nd anniversary of September 11th. Joe Biden's administration gave Iran, which of course helped the September 11th terrorists, $6 billion yesterday. The U.S. cleared the way for $6 billion in oil proceeds to be returned to Iran and agreed to release 5 Iranians as part of a secretly negotiated deal that will clear the way for 5 American citizens detained in Iran to return home. The Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, notified Congress yesterday of a waiver that will let German, Irish, Qatari, South Korean, and Swiss banks transfer the $6 billion from South Korea without fear of running afoul of U.S. sanctions. He said the $6 billion would be held in restricted accounts in Qatar, where it will be available only for humanitarian trade. An Iranian government spokesman said on Monday that he expected transfers of frozen funds to be completed over the next few days. The letter to Congress did not say when the prisoner exchange would take place. So now we're swapping prisoners with the Iranis. on the same day of the September 11th anniversary with a country that openly helped the September 11th terrorists. And then there's this. The Biden administration rightfully getting blowback because his national security team praised Saudi Arabia. That's right. White House National Security Council spokesperson Adrienne Watson commended Saudis for participating in a major joint project that would connect Gulf and Arab countries by railway, an initiative the Biden White House has pushed in the Middle East to combat China's growing influence in the region. Watson put on X, formerly known as Twitter, "We welcome this weekend's announcement by Saudi Arabia committing $20 billion to support President Biden's signature initiative, the Partnership for Global Infrastructure." This comes, of course, on September 11th. Biden's national security team praising the Saudis, who, of course, the main culprits involved with September 11th. What else can you say? Outside of these people have zero pulse of the moment. They have no self-awareness. And it starts, by the way, at the very top. At the very top of the food chain is where that begins. And it all filters on down from there. It is as embarrassing and as pathetic as anything else. You want to talk about not understanding the moment? You want to talk about having no concept of reality and what the day is all about? Way to go, guys. And before we get to Lee Summit Mayor, who we're looking forward to talking to here coming up, Bill Baird, all I can say to this is, let's go, Brandon. Well, this is awkward. This is, the old saying of if you're going to run for office, make sure you scrub your social media and scrub your past as best you can. At least those things you don't want people to know about. Like, I have a friend who has wanted to run for office since he was like 13. Literally everything he's done since 13 has been through the prism of knowing one day he wants to run for office. So, he wasn't a guy who was at parties in college drinking beer underage because he was like, what if somebody takes a picture of me? Now, Donald Trump totally changed the game, right? Trump completely changed the conversation and changed what your past can do to your political future. I don't want to say it's irrelevant, but it's certainly not as meaningful as it was, especially because we're so divided as a nation. Republicans will find an excuse to vote for Republicans, no matter what their history entails, and same thing with Democrats. So this next story in Virginia, a Virginia Democrat who is running for the House of Delegates, that's essentially like state rep seat in Kansas or Missouri, is being accused of performing sex acts with her husband in front of an online audience and encouraging viewers to tip them money. Nurse practitioner Susan Gibson is her name. And I can hear many of you doing a little Google search there. So just pump the brakes. Listen to the story first, would you please? Susanna Gibson, nurse practitioner, is running in a suburban district in Richmond. And she reportedly used a platform called Chatterbait to stream sex acts with her husband. She is a 40-year-old mother of two and has said, here's the crazy part, by the way. I mean, if it's not crazy enough already. She posted more than a dozen videos that were archived on another site called Wreckabait in September of 2022, which is after she officially entered the race. So it's not like we're digging up videos, or not we're, but it's not like people are digging up videos of this candidate from back when, 10 years ago, when she was maybe newly married and didn't have kids or whatever else, and wasn't even thinking about a political future. This mother was posting these videos a year ago, which is after she decided she was going to run for office. I mean, you got to be, oh my gosh. you just, I mean, I know that people, I don't even know what they think anymore. I mean, this is next level.
You got to know if you post something online, it's going to go out. I mean, somebody's going to screenshot something, you're going to get in trouble.
Oh, wait, is that the lady running for House Seat 57? Oh, my goodness. Oh, jeez, what's going on here? Oh, okay.
I saw an Outkick, they posted it, and they posted a generic, porn star photo.
Oh, did they?
And so it's not the actual lady. And below it says not pictured. I was like, you guys, come on.
Oh, my goodness. Okay. So what she did is she's said to have told viewers she will perform specific sex acts in a private room if viewers pay her more tokens. She said, I need more tokens before I let him do that, referring to a sex act with her husband. So she was trying to get tips on this website to perform sex acts with her husband. Here's my problem. My problem is this lady's an idiot. If you want to do that, at least it's with your husband. And maybe for whatever reason, you both get some joy and pleasure out of that. But to do that after you've announced you're running for office and then being shocked and upset when it comes out during your campaign is one of the dumbest things I've ever seen and read and heard. That is just do people use their brain anymore? And it also goes to show you that we are getting the lowest common denominator running for office. We are not, as Donald Trump once said, getting their best, referring to the people coming across the southern border. We are not getting the best and the brightest who want to be involved in politics anymore. These are the people that we get. The people with egos who want to build social media followings and want to build their Instagram. And, oh, by the way, we're making sex tapes a year ago after they announced they were running for office. That's who we get. 913-408-7710. I mean, that's also the text line, by the way.
On a side note, Nancy Pelosi is running for re-election.
No. Oh, gosh. No, I just got the vision of Paul Pelosi answering the door in his underwear with a bottle of wine, wondering what was going on.
They have security cam footage.
Oh, no. Oh, here's the thing, though. Nancy's made enough money off the taxpayer. She swindled enough money out of us. She doesn't need to add to her cookie jar through this kind of activity. She doesn't need to do that. So Gibson, this candidate, Susanna Gibson, told the Washington Post that the incident represents an illegal invasion of my privacy designed to humiliate me and my family. Well, it's not illegal if you're posting these things online for other people to enjoy and willingly watch and soliciting tips, by the way, for the actions that you were performing on camera.
Tell me you skipped civics class without saying you skipped civics class.
Yeah, right? That's exactly right. She goes, it won't intimidate me and it won't silence me. Okay, well, good for you. My political opponents and their Republican allies have proven they're willing to commit a sex crime to attack me and my family because there's no line they won't cross to silence women when they speak up. Oh, my gosh. Oh, the holier than thou nonsense here. You were screwing your husband on camera and trying to make money off it. You're not a victim here. You're not. You took that to the public. It's not illegal for then one of your political opponents to say, wait, is that? Hold on. What? That's my opponent, Susanna Gibson. Geez, I don't know. Maybe some people want to know that my opponent, since announcing she's running for office, is so brazen that she is posting sex acts of herself on websites with her husband and soliciting tips for that. Maybe that's something that voters want to know just to get behind the scenes, no pun intended, and know a little bit about the character of my opponent. Sheesh. That's not playing dirty. That's you being an absolute imbecile. That's what that is. And that's where, she's not like cheating on her husband. She's doing this with her husband. I still completely disagree with the whole thing about posting it online. But if nothing else, this person is just not very bright. And that's where you say to yourself, do you want that person representing you, in this case, in Virginia? That's the question that has to be asked. But here's the thing. Once again, we are in such a hyper-partisan time. Here's what's going to happen. And this would happen if it was a Republican, too. So don't act like, Democrats just do whatever they're told to do. Republicans would do the same thing if this candidate was a Republican. They would say, she's standing up for herself. Who cares? She's just doing it with her husband and trying to make some money on the side. What's the big deal? Like, regardless of which political party this lady was in, she happens to be a Democrat, but it doesn't matter. The base of the party would defend her because that's where we are right now in politics. It is so divisive that you will, and I don't mean you, but many will excuse the actions and the idiocy of their own candidates. It's where we are right now. I don't like it. I wish that the options were a little better, but that's the world that we live in. So this is not going to sink her campaign by any stretch. In fact, it just means that she's probably going to be one of the most Google searches of the day, sad to say.